Hi everyone, my name is Apuraj Garakapati. Welcome to my YouTube channel Amazing Apai.
Don't just hear the story, enter it.
Guard military parade marches from the royal castle and now heads toward the arena. However, the champion is nowhere to be seen because of his injuries. The crowd is busy discussing his journey from slave to champion. The audience in the arena cheers loudly for our boy. Crayon, as usual, is not happy to see them cheering for Kalli instead of him. Eldrin reminds him that he needs to show the composure of a ruler in front of his people. Meanwhile, Eldrin's mind is occupied with the noble votes that have turned the tide in his favor. All he needs to do is expel his rival after this closing ceremony. On the other hand, Crayon is planning Eldrin's doom. With a smirk, he hints at how well he has trained his royal guard. This catches Eldrin off guard. Crayon continues speaking about the three major military forces of the capital: the Royal Guard, the Capital Standing Army, and the Capital Security Force. The last one is an independent section. He comments on how Eldrin has monopolized the remaining Capital Standing Army and the Royal Guard. Now Eldrin wants to know his point. Crayon finally reveals his scheme that he has already replaced the Standing Army with rude falling soldiers, and the remaining Royal Guards are currently here for the parade. The next moment, the Royal Guards tense up, sensing the presence of another armed force. Then Crayon orders Eldrin's expulsion, because today he declares he is going to recreate the kingdom with himself as its central figure. As soon as the guards rush toward him, he is ready with his sword. One by one, he kills both guards. One of the nobles shouts for protection for Eldrin, but the enemy guards have already locked the Royal Guards behind the bars. Meanwhile, Eldrin looks at the king and tries to reason with him one last time, but the guards charge at him. With no choice left, he runs from there. A commotion erupts everywhere as civil war breaks out and pulls everyone into it. Now he understands that this is no longer about which noble wins in the end. The kingdom is going to be doomed. This becomes painfully clear. His companion directs him to a safe place. Eldrin declares that this is Rude Falling's doing. The civil war quickly engulfs Dragos and the city falls into chaos. Meanwhile, the independent guards are divided, each choosing their respective noble side. Death becomes common on the streets of Dragos. At the same time, the Zato mercenary group hired by Nasha is also on the move to eliminate our boy. Now the leader is moving through the civil war, something Nasha has already predicted to him. His companions think looting nobles will be more profitable, but he reminds them that Nasha is extremely generous with payment. She paid them well even last time, after they disposed of the guards. Meanwhile, the lower mercenaries pray to God because their opponent is none other than our boy. When they reach Kalli's place, they find trembling servants trying to protect him. The leader threatens them to move aside, calling them nothing but servants. Despite their fear, they stand their ground because they want to repay their debt to Kalli. At that moment, our boy enters, declaring that if they are after him, they should leave innocent people out of the battle. His mind, however, is occupied with Nasha. He knows she is after him, yet he cannot understand her reason for starting a civil war. The low-ranking mercenaries are shocked to see him recovered. Another whispers that he must be the incarnation of a war god. The leader is certain of Kalli's bad health condition. Besides, he knows Kalli isn't particularly skilled with a sword, so he politely asks him to surrender his life on his own. Kalli declares that he is already wasting away his energy and bed. Then, unsheathing his sword, he announces the start of their war. On the other hand, Kalli no longer has any regrets in his life. He has already achieved his goal. Yet, for a brief moment, his mind drifts to his family. He also knows that death is inevitable. That doesn't mean he will sit idly and wait for it. That's why he rushes toward his enemies to defend himself. But before he can even clash with them, a hooded figure appears between him and his foes. Kalli is shocked as he recognizes the person. It is none other than Jarrat. Jarrat declares that he is going to repay his debt by protecting him. The mercenaries also recognize Jarrat and hesitate to fight. The leader comments on how foolish it is for Jarrat to risk his life for an acquaintance. Jarrat, however, declares that Kalli is a tough nut to kill, as anyone can see from the incident when he fought the lion and survived. They can feel that he is protected by some invisible force. Normally, Jarrat works for money, but today he fights for his belief. He challenges the mercenaries, daring those who want to kill him to come forward. Zato remains adamant and orders his men to kill both of them. However, half of his men side with Kalli, believing he is protected by the god of war. The remaining half are ready to kill everyone on Kalli's side. Meanwhile, Aldrin's subordinate informs him that the standing army is fully assembled. However, there is not a single commander to lead them. The kingdom is in total chaos. Prisoners and slaves are revolting, taking advantage of the situation. He does not have enough armed force to win. His first priority is to secure manpower. For this purpose, he turns to his guards and commands the mission to rescue the royal guards. But the next moment, his companion brings bad news. Rude falling soldiers are burning the royal guards alive inside the arena. This reminds him of the time he faced death of his soldiers in a previous battle. He grits his teeth with fury. With no choice left, he prepares to attack to reclaim the royal palace and confront King Creon. At that moment, some nobles flee the capital, oblivious to who started the war. Rude falling or Aldrin, some care only about their own safety. Along the way, they confront hooded figures moving toward the capital. Among them is Vegan, looking terrified out of his mind. He wonders what kind of deeds our boy committed in his past to bring Imperial soldiers for his aid. The fight breaks off. Zato mocks Geralt for his twin blade technique is shallow while trying to attack him. While Geralt taunts him back while their weapons clash, he wonders how many of his allies still stand when a mercenary suddenly drops from the upper floor and draws every eye. Among the chaos, he spots our guy standing tall. Enemies drift toward Kalli, shocked. They wonder whether he is really the war god's incarnation. Another consoles that someone unworthy of such a name because of his inability to handle a sword. Their attitude shifts the moment one of them trades swords with him facing his strength. Kalli drives a punch into the man's face, then slams his sword on his face, and follows with rapid strikes that force him backward. Another opponent rushes in with his weapon high, but Kalli blocks the swing and kicks him aside. A crack splits across Kalli's sword. Two of them notice the weakened blade and step forward, convinced the fight is reaching its end. Kalli reties himself as two enemies close in at once, and orders halts everything. An officer marches in with soldiers at his back, demanding to know which one is Baron Kalli adjust. Relief washes through Kalli at the sight of the arrival Imperial army, and he internally shows gratitude toward Vagan. Zato understands they are the Baron's reinforcements and forces his men forward, urging them to finish Kalli before they leave. Imperial soldiers rush ahead. Two of them lock arms to form a platform, launching a third soldier toward Kalli. Before the attacker reaches him, one of the hooded figures cuts the man down and greets Kalli as an instructor, remarking on the time since their last meeting. The man simply assures him that protection will follow from this point onward. The battlefield shifts instantly. The mercenaries. Before we move ahead, please take a second to like on this video. A like tells me that you enjoyed this topic. Your support helps Amazing Apai grow naturally. Tied, and Zato throws his weapon down without resistance. Kalli offers thanks to Geralt and promises a safe welcome to any of their men in Agesta territory. He responds that he is only returning what he once owed. Vagan rushes to Kalli's side, checking for injuries, and Kalli assures him the timing of their arrival prevented the worst. Our boy then lowers his voice, noting how bringing the Imperial army helped, but the three hooded individuals do not act like common Imperial soldiers. He wonders how our boy managed to notice. Vagan describes what occurred at the embassy. After handing over the token, news of the civil war stirred everyone into urgent preparation. Someone of high importance soon appeared, insisted on assigning these three specific people to aid them, and left the entire embassy tense and obedient. From that reaction, Vagan realized the person held power far beyond ordinary officials. Kalli tries to guess the identity and rank of the one who sent them. The Imperial army soldier approaches and urges him to leave quickly, whispering that Imperial involvement in the kingdom's conflict must remain hidden. Kalli explains his intention to head toward the royal capital instead. He objects immediately. With the civil war raging, the capital holds more danger than safety, and they should withdraw. At once, Kalli asks whether they can protect him or not. The figure clarifies that they are not his personal guards. Kalli then makes it clear he is ready to continue alone. However, then he remembers their superior's strict order to guard Kalli even if it leads to revealing who they are. He declares they will accompany him. Kalli requests 5 soldiers to escort Vagan and the servants to safety. Vagan calls out to him, filled with worry, Kalli tells him he served with loyalty and skill, that life in the capital had stayed comfortable thanks to him. He mentions he already sent a letter to Count Bormer, so Vagan only needs to return home. Vagan's eyes fill, but when he tries to resist, Kalli places a hand on his shoulder. Kalli reminds him that he once lived under the weight of being labeled a slave, and now Vagan must face the burden of being judged an unfilial son. If he wishes to change the perspective of people, he must reshape that image through action. Kalli walks away after giving him one announcement that Vagan earned his respect through his own efforts. Meanwhile, fighting continues around the capital's walls as Eldrin hides behind a wall. One of his subordinates reports that Root Following's trained soldiers are wearing down their forces, and the front line can no longer push through the gate. He recommends pulling back to reorganize. He declines that long battle would give other lords time to interfere, and Root Following still has supplies coming in from his own territory. He decides the fight must be concluded before night. He calls the remaining commanders together and informs them that he will be leading the next advance himself. His decision surprises those around him. The officer announces to the troops that he will be at the front to remove Root Following and recover the king. Eldrin gives the order to move. Soldiers advance. Archers from King's side also release their arrows at them. Voices rise from the enemy ranks, claiming that Eldrin has already entered the castle and urging their side to eliminate the traitors. He responds that they are the ones who have betrayed the crown. In the clash that follows, he is knocked down by an opponent's kick, and the soldier raises his weapon to finish him. Before the strike lands, someone steps in and delivers a punch that sends the attacker back. The other soldier appears behind the attacker. He looks at them in shock. These are the members of Kalli's unit, fighters trained in Imperial close combat arts who serve as the royal family's hidden guard. Kalli walks onto the field and orders his group to clear the way. The three hooded soldiers move forward together, opening a path deeper into the battle. Root Following forces his troops to defend the gate while panic pushes through his mind. Crayon's warning echoes that he had been ordered to remove Eldrin or face ruin later. If he failed now, his entire house would collapse. Leaving with no choice, he writes a letter to Eldrin asking for support for rebuilding the capital and sending his second and third sons as hostages. He prepares to call for a messenger by sending the letter. Just then a blade answers first. Nasha attacks him from behind and remarks how troublesome his retreat would be. He crashes to the floor. Nasha stands over him thanking him for completing his role. He trembles, unable to understand how she bypassed his guards. She explains that men always lower their guard around harmless-looking women and leave the dead bodies outside as proof. She intends to end him in one stroke, raising her weapon. Meanwhile, Kalli's disciples continue tearing through Root Following his elite troops. Eldrin watches their coordinated movements and tries to understand who these fighters are. He knows Kalli has no private army, yet these three handle the battlefield as if trained for royal emergencies. Eldrin realizes Kalli's arrival at the capital could only be because of Nasha's. He remembers ordering her to leave after the ceremony and cannot understand why she stayed. Kalli hints that the answer should already be clear. Eldrin warns him not to push too far alone, but Kalli trusts the people behind him. Eldrin calls again, asking him to spare Nasha if possible. Kalli accepts responsibility himself. He knows once news of her crime spreads, nothing can be repaired, so Eldrin must think ahead. Kalli mentions that he intends to be gone before nightfall. He understands what he has to do, and it is not out of personal anger. Nasha has taken lives, misled the king, and allowed her own fears and beliefs to drive her actions. If he still has any strength left, he feels obligated to stop her. His knees suddenly give out, and one of the soldiers catches him. The Imperial soldier urges him to get away while he can, but Kalli refuses. He asks the man for his rank. When the soldier confirms that he is a centurion, Kalli tells him he will recommend him for advancement if their mission succeeds. The centurion snaps back in disbelief, and Kalli calmly says he will bring the request directly to the emperor if necessary. The soldiers nearby exchange quiet, puzzled comments at this. Elsewhere in the castle, guards rush down corridors, shouting for people to clear the way. The confusion quickly spreads through the rest of the troops. Kalli grabs a guard and demands the king's location. Recognition flashes in the guard's eyes as he points toward a staircase. Kalli rushes on, ignoring those already running for their lives. Another soldier stops him and asks to shake hands for luck. Kalli questions the request. His companion can't believe that many believe he embodies the war god's incarnation. The soldier explains that, with Root falling dead, they need all the luck they can get. The mention of the Duke's death makes Kalli freeze. He asks again and the soldiers confirm it. A sense of dread rises inside him, and he orders everyone to move faster. In the annex, the weakened King Crayon lies in bed while Nasha assures him of victory. Relief shows on his face that battle will soon end. She watches him like someone studying a fading candle and feels a quiet satisfaction. Suddenly a pain seizes her body. She collapses. Crayon tries to raise worried while she struggles internally. She blames her curse, her rotting organs, her years of unanswered prayers, and the fraud who deceived her. If life demands this suffering, she intends to do as she wants until the end. She only needs confirmation of Kalli's death. The door bursts open. Light pierces the room. Our boy announces they found her. Kalli steps forward and she stares in disbelief that someone she counted as dead still breathes. Crayon trembles and asks why he came. Just then a gas spreads through the room. A soldier identifies it as poison similar to hallucinogenic mushrooms and warns Kalli not to inhale it. Kalli sees his Nasha by the neck and demands an explanation about what she gave Crayon. She insists Crayon was already unstable, so his end is inevitable. Angrily he pushes her aside in frustration. She grumbles about her hired fighters failing to handle a man who was barely standing. Kalli interrupts, saying he had expected a real conversation after all these years, yet she still shields herself with falsehoods. He picks up a sword, points it at her, and tells her to offer her life. He accuses her of exploiting people's vulnerabilities and calls her a witch for it. She responds that her only fault was being born to die, and that anyone else in her place would have acted the same way. Kalli dismisses this entirely. To him, desperation does not excuse the crime she has done. Even gladiators enter the arena knowing. Before we move ahead, please take a second to share on this video. Sharing helps this video reach friends who may also enjoy anime, gaming, travel, cricket, chess, career basics, or personal stories. Your support helps Amazing Abhi grow naturally. Death is part of the deal, but she took lives without ever risking her own. He admits his own life was flawed, yet he was given a chance and he wanted others to have that same chance, just not her. Nasha refuses to accept his judgment and insists there must be a real witch somewhere who can rescue her. Then she abruptly cries out for her father. Kalli remarks that she finally remembered him. Eldrin enters the room at that moment. Our boy gestures toward Nasha, showing him her true nature. Nasha stiffens completely the instant she sees him. A little while ago, when a soldier informed Kalli about Duke Rudafoling's death, unease rose in him immediately, pushing him to move faster. At that moment, Eldrin appeared then, calling out to him, determined to witness with his own eyes what his daughter had done. Our boy made it clear that his presence would not change the outcome. He dropped his weapon in front of him in full submission and pleaded for the permission to follow without interfering. In the present, he is before Nasha and confirms whether she provoked the civil war, ruined Crayon's rule, and sent assassins after our guy. Her silence, shaped by terror, gives him every answer he needs. Crayon breaks into the moment, shouting at the soldiers to protect Nasha. The Imperial soldiers remain still. His disbelief turns to outrage as he tries to command obedience by throwing his royal status at them. As if the title alone should bend their will, Nasha trembles violently when Kalli levels his blade at her. She backs away, convinced a demon stands in front of her, begging for her life. The Imperial Guard watches the scene with growing disgust, disappointed at such pathetic people holding the kingdom. Crayon reaches for a weapon near his bed and screams at the soldiers again, ordering them to kill everyone. Kalli steps ahead of his disciples and calls Crayon a puppet. Crayon charges at him, clinging to the belief that his bloodline makes him untouchable. Kalli stops his arm mid-swing. The pressure he applies forces Crayon to his knees, tearing a cry from him. Kalli regards him and Nasha as the same kind. People who believed others existed only for their fun. If the throne protects those who avoid justice, then he intends to deliver that justice himself. Eldrin calls out to Kalli, asking him to stop. He criticizes Crayon's stupidity, but reminds our boy that the coronation has already been completed and that killing him now would send the entire kingdom into destruction. He steps forward as if to interfere, but Kalli stops him, urging him to look clearly at the situation. He points out them causing repeated tragedies, with countless lives lost because of their careless actions, Yet they continue to claim the right to rule. He refuses to allow more harm by letting them continue unchecked. Nasha manages to stand, trembling. She begs her father to protect her and insists that Kalli is nothing more than a low-born man attacking her out of spite. Ealdrin finds himself torn. He weighs the responsibility he has carried toward the kingdom against his loyalty to his daughter. The conflict resolves suddenly and painfully. He rushes forward, grabs a fallen sword, and moves toward Nasha. Kalli calls after him, asking if this is the path he has chosen. Just then Ealdrin strikes Nasha down. The room falls silent. Nasha looks stunned, unable to comprehend why the father she depended on chose duty over her. He quietly tells her they will meet again in the hell. She falls, and Crown reacts in horror at the sight. Kalli is stunned by what Ealdrin has done. Ealdrin's hands shake as he asks Kalli to leave Crayon in his care. To him, protecting the royal line now means securing the kingdom's stability, not shielding Crayon as an individual. He looks at Crayon and tells him to appreciate that Ealdrin is still choosing to carry him forward. Crayon remains devastated by Nasha's death. By dawn, the rebellion is over. Ealdrin takes Crayon away, broken and unresponsive. The royal forces suppress both root-falling soldiers and the unrest in the city. The House of Root-Falling is branded as traitorous, and every surviving male member becomes a political hostage. Over the next 6 months, Drigos undergoes rapid rebuilding under Marquis Ealdrin's direction as construction spreads across the capital. During this time, our dude works tirelessly to restore order until the newly reformed Royal Guard is able to operate independently. Once the guard is stable, he prepares to return to his own lands. Before he departs, he meets with Ealdrin, who acknowledges the weight Kalli carried through the crisis. Kalli mentions the exaggerations Ealdrin allowed to circulate. Titles like Civil War Ender, Ogre Slayer, Lion Tamer, Champion, War God's Avatar. He considers all of them absurd. Ealdrin explains that the kingdom needed a figure who could unify scattered morale and reassure a frightened populace, and Kalli became the most practical symbol for that purpose. Their interactions over those 6 months remained complicated. They worked together, but neither addresses the events of that night directly. Before Kalli leaves, Ealdrin asks a final question about the soldiers from that night. He dismisses the idea that they were simple mercenaries and hints at unusual activities surrounding the Imperial Embassy. He notes he can always investigate personally if needed. Kalli realizes Ealdrin has already reached the correct conclusion. Then he explains his connection to the Emperor and the events that took place behind the scenes. Ealdrin comments that if this information had been public earlier, no one would have dared to confront Kalli. He clarifies that the power involved belongs solely to the imperial family and is not something he has the right to display or rely on. Then he prepares to return home. After that, many think he is abandoning easy wealth and influence by going back to his small territory. His decisions rarely match what nobles expect, and that unpredictability is part of what keeps his name remembered. He returns to Ealdrin. However, his reputation continued to spread throughout the kingdom long after. Ealdrin wakes Kalli the next day, pulling him out of a deep sleep. He assumes it's early morning, but the sun is already high. Ever since he returned to Agest, the rest of the world has been changing at break-neck speed. Soon after he left the capital, Crayon was killed at a banquet by Wyron Joseph, who claimed to avenge his sister. With the king dead, the 6-year-old second prince was crowned, immediately triggering another civil war. Powerful nobles fought viciously over the regency, while the kingdom fell apart. Farms were abandoned, families starved, and countless nobles escaped to the empire to avoid the chaos. The empire finally stepped in, claiming they were restoring order. Within a month, every competing faction was swept aside, and the kingdom was reduced to a subordinate territory. Agest, being far from the political center, escaped the harshest changes. Wistery never tried to draft men there, and the major lords chose not to involve themselves with Kalli at all. His name alone kept disputes away. The unexpected result was growth. Travelers starts passing through in large numbers. Every inn filled to the roof, and Agest's raspberry wine became so sought after that the supply never quite caught up with demand. While Kalli prepares for the day, Azalea reminds him about errands at the training center. He agrees, hoping to finish quickly. The place looks nothing like before. It has shifted entirely to boxing classes. Quano's old martial art is no longer taught. The boxer's freedom hadn't come instantly either. Kalli had placed them under a contract that lessened his debt after each fight. Azalea mentions that a couple has arrived to meet him. When the man steps in, our boy immediately recognizes Bogdu. Bogdu enters with his usual thunderous energy, loud enough that both Kalli and Azalea reflexively cover their ears. He bows more times than necessary, introduces Snoren as his wife, and insists on expressing his gratitude properly. Azalea leans toward Kalli, whispering for an explanation. Kalli rubs his ears, asking Bogdu to speak at a human volume. Bogdu shifts into a stiff, overly formal manner as he apologizes. He reports that his injured arm works normally again, though the scars remain. Kalli turns to Snoren, surprised that she chose Bogdu. Snoren simply explains that no one else would have risked everything for her the way he did. Kalli congratulates them sincerely. Bogdu mentions he will be leaving soon to compete in another tournament. They part with goodwill. 1 year passes. Under imperial administration, the kingdom becomes hollow. Nobles can no longer live comfortably by collecting taxes. Some open shops. Others take low-ranking government positions to survive. Kalli reviews a pile of official papers, noticing how far-reaching the new policies have become. A colleague remarks that a jest will be fine. They never relied on tax money anyway. Their wine and constant travelers are enough to keep them thriving. A subordinate suddenly rushes in, announcing an unexpected visitor. The moment he hears the name Philip, his expressions change. Philip enters with the same composed authority he has always carried. He asks everyone but Kalli to leave. He starts with a light remark, teasing Kalli for abandoning the empire to live quietly in the countryside. Kalli tells him to save the mockery if he plans on staying long. Philip comments on a jest as raspberry wine and the two sample a few. Then Kalli notices someone waiting behind him, the colonel who once supported him. Kalli expresses his gratitude, but the man waves it off, explaining that he is now the chief colonel and still can't believe the emperor himself visited him. Philip sends the numb outside. When the room is quiet, he shares difficult news that Mr. Shinui passed away peacefully in his sleep. Kalli stops breathing for a moment. He had known the old man was aging, yet the news still cuts unexpectedly deep. Philip apologizes for failing to keep an old promise and for allowing the kingdom to fall under imperial control. Once the Second Civil War spun out of control, he had no other choice. Our boy sighs, remembering how the collapse began the moment he accidentally killed Philip's brother, breaking the treaty between them. Philip moves past that history. His reason for coming is different. He wants the entire truth about Kalli and Shinui. Before we move ahead, please take a second to like on this video. A like tells me that you enjoyed this topic. Your support helps Amazing Apai grow naturally. Connection. Kalli asks if it needed a personal visit and Philip says he wouldn't come otherwise. So Kalli tells him. Halfway through the explanation, Philip drops the glass he had been holding. The idea of another world leaves him speechless. Kalli clarifies that both he and Shinui died once, and only their souls crossed over, arriving in this world with everything they remembered. Philip asks if that makes Kalli divine. Kalli quickly denies that they were never gods, only pawns caught in powers beyond their grasp. Philip reflects on all the strange things about Shinui, the knowledge, the unusual skills, the effortless understanding of alien concepts. Suddenly, it all makes sense. Had the truth surfaced sooner, society would have shattered. Shinui bore that burden alone. Kalli explains their original world wasn't much different. Same physics, same flow of time. Shinui believed Philip could lead this world forward. Kalli wonders if Philip feels like a tool shaped by another's design. Philip stands and firmly rejects the notion. Regardless of its origin, the knowledge is his, and he will build his nation on his terms. Our boy tells him to follow that path. Philip then offers one last thing. Kalli by his side, with honor, power, and security. He gazes out the window at his peaceful family, smiles softly, and declines. His second life was for himself. Now he wants to give what remains to those outside. Philip calls him soft, confessing that's why he avoids marriage. Kalli quietly agrees that after the tournament, his fire for boxing faded, replaced by a longing for quiet days watching his children grow. Philip accepts and leaves. Later, a subordinate asks about the visitor, guessing he was someone important. Kalli casually says it was the emperor. The subordinate laughs, thinking it a joke, and presses for the truth. After that, seasons change. Winter melts, autumn returns, and our dude warm afternoons picnicking with family. Each moment confirms the simple life is enough. 2 decades pass under imperial rule. The old feudal order crumbles. Elder nobles cling to fading traditions, while youth chase new chances. Many head west, fallen nobles seeking redemption, commoners chasing fortune, ambitious men starting anew. Few grasp that desert's harshness. Finally, Kalli collapses in that same western desert, calling out desperately for his daughter. The scene flashes back to the time when everything was normal. On a normal day, Branda shakes her father awake, telling him morning has passed. His armor and swords lie nearby. Under 2 decades of empire, he raised 2 children, Soren and Branda Aegist. During that time, whenever he feels pain in his knee, sensing rain, Branda offers his cane. Human days make old injuries ache, especially the leg the ogre once broke. Pushing himself in youth left a permanent toll. Kalli lifts a family picture, noting how much Branda resembles her mother. Azalea died 5 years ago, leaving their home hollow. Branda sets Kalli's meal down, but he immediately complains about the tiny portion. She tells him he's become obese despite his bad leg, and warns that ignoring his health will end badly, like how Kicho collapsed. Since Azalea died, Kalli's body has weakened. His comrades have passed away too. He stopped exercising and started drinking heavily. He lost the will to recover. Kalli reluctantly agrees to stop nagging. She can't help but think how different he once was, a fierce boxer known across the land. Now he acts more like a stubborn child than the warrior he used to be. He mutters about raising children who only fuss over his meals and asks about Soren, puzzled by his restless energy. Soren has made a name for himself out west. After Azalea's funeral, he struck out to build a new life, founding the settlement of Aegistina. His influence grew quickly, and he's now a leading candidate for mayor. Kalli admires the boy's success, but feels the tangled weight of its consequences. He admits to himself that he was more companion than father. Azalea was the true matriarch, raising not 2, but 3 children with unmatched strength. A messenger arrives handing Kalli a letter. As he reads, Branda's face lights up. It's from Soren inviting them to visit the West. The promise of milder winters and warmer air excites her, and she insists they must go. Kalli's mind flickers with worry that rumors say native tribes still roam those lands. Branda says that he's grown cautious with age. At 46, Kalli prefers the familiar comfort of Aegist, but Branda warns that hesitation could cost him the chance to see Soren again. He refuses to accept that fate. She ends the debate, commanding preparations to begin. A week later they arrived. A man spots them and hurries over. Branda watches silently from the carriage, while Kalli comments on the comfort of official hospitality with a chance to rest. Branda teases him, suggesting he must have been quite the figure in his youth. Kalli recalls how crowds once hung on his every word. They move from town to, journeying toward the western border. There, a man approaches and asks if he is Baron Kalli. Introducing himself as Jacob sent by Soren, he unfolds a map and explains the route ahead. A direct path to Aegistana once took 3 days, but safer carriage routes stretched the trip to a week. Kalli admits ignorance of the way and defers to Jacob's guidance. Jacob speaks highly of Soren's importance in the pioneer city of Delphia. Aegistina flourishes, supported by the rich northern forests. When Kalli asks if Soren will become mayor, Jacob confirms it, explaining the position lasts for life unless one steps down. He adds that the land once belonged to native peoples before settlers drove them out. Branda's unease grows at this. Jacob dismisses her concerns, labeling the natives uncivilized and insisting they should be grateful for the settlers' improvements. A chill runs through Kalli, a haunting echo of history's brutal patterns of his ordinal world. But something about this stirs discomfort deep within him. That night as camp settles, Kalli spots a small lizard nearby. He remembers how Branda once reacted, different now. She draws her dagger and strikes the creature down in one swift motion. Impressed, Kalli asks if she's been training. She admits to having dislocated Soren's arm years ago while practicing martial arts from a manual. Kalli recalls Soren's story about a fall down the stairs. Branda confesses she tested the moves on Soren when he was just 10. Suddenly voices echo nearby. Kalli tenses, glancing toward the darkness. 2 figures approach casting long shadows. The moment pulls him back to a grim memory involving Count Bormer. One voice calls out, asking if Kalli is awake. Jacob steps forward, weapon drawn, and Branda stiffens. He warns them not to panic, that they're hostages, not targets. They are bound and shoved into a carriage, Branda asks about the servants. Kalli urges silence and tries to understand Jacob's motives. Jacob shrugs, claiming ignorance, and commands Kalli to behave. Days blur as they drift through the desert. Heat saps Kalli's strength. Branda stays close. Jacob lashes out at a companion for killing their guide, who apparently resisted capture. Without the guide, their plans unravel, leaving them directionless. Supplies dwindle. Exhaustion takes hold. Someone notes the last camel pulling their carriage. Jacob decides to kill it at night and collect its blood to survive. He turns to Kalli, who Branda struggles to keep upright. Jacob states bluntly that Kalli is near death and warns both man and beast will soon lose their heads. They should say their goodbyes. Branda calls them mad, reminding Jacob of their worth. Jacob coldly replies that losing limbs won't diminish their usefulness and threatens her silence under pain of crippling injury. Clinging to her father, Branda refuses to accept his resignation. Later, Kalli remembers that he's lived long enough, apologizing with the defeated heir. She recalls their mother's words, argued that Branda shares his spirit, but more importantly, inherited an unyielding will. She questions if her mother ever misjudged him. Kalli notices Branda has broken her thumb to slip free and is already working to free him. He urges her to run while the camel blocks their captors. The kidnappers notice the struggle. Kalli breaks free, races to the camel, and flees into the wilderness. His mind races that dying now, hiding behind protection, would be easy. To truly protect Branda, he must survive. Later near a river, the camel collapses. A lizard creeps forward. Our guy catches it, eyes locked on the creature. He vows to succeed where he failed. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to Amazing Apai. Subscribing makes sure you do not miss the next video, and it gives me motivation to keep improving the quality of every upload. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one.